Retirement Benefits Authority plays a crucial role in managing your scheme. We supervise continuously, receiving quarterly and annual submissions from trustees and service providers. Your pension is in safe hands. Know your rights and trust Retirement Benefits Authority to keep your future secure. For more information, visit our website www.rba.go.ke, call our toll-free line on 0800 720 300 or email info@rba.go.ke. Secure your future, secure your peace of mind. RBA, safeguarding your retirement benefits.
Are you a talented artist? Or are you passionate about a topic you want to discuss? But money can be very hard to find for an upcoming artist. Don't worry, Studio Mashinani has got your back. Sign up on ajira.co.ke to book a session with your music and video producers across the country. Work on your music, jingles, spoken words, and even podcasts to realize your dream. All for free. Studio Mashinani, Radani Talent.
And you're just in time for News Check. Our key focus this morning will be on the Finance Bill 2025 that is set to, of course, finance the budget of 2025-2026. That is our keen focus, with the various committees expected to hold and are continuing to hold various committee briefings and meetings with stakeholders across the country and state departments of government institutions in regards to the projections the government is garnering to seek in the next fiscal year. That will be a focus this morning. Talk to us on our social media platforms at KBC Channel 1 and at Abdiaziz Hashim 1. We're also keeping an eye on various events that are currently unfolding in the 47 devolved units. Of particular, any moment from now, we'll be taking you live to Diani in Kwale County, where the Connected Africa Summit 2025 is ongoing with the information, communication and the digital economy, ICT. That is Cabinet Secretary William Kabogo will be addressing that particular gathering. We'll be taking you there live as and when the Cabinet Secretary will be taking to the podium. Elsewhere, we'll be also focusing on the Finance Bill 2025 hearings that are currently ongoing at the Edge Convention Centre in South Sea, where various stakeholders are making their presentation ahead of the committee embarking on a countrywide public participation exercise before tabling the report before the House. Also, the Budget and Appropriation Committee is meeting various chairs of the National Assembly departmental committees on the various proposals that have been made by the various ministries and state departments in terms of the projections of the budget 25-26, and we'll be taking you there live as well. Also, keeping an eye at the Supreme Court of Kenya. Any moment from now, we do anticipate Paul Ndemo, the Supreme Court spokesperson, will be addressing the media on the judiciary attacks that have been witnessed in the country for the last few days or so. And then finally, the Cabinet Secretary for Lands and Housing, that is Alice Wahome, will be in Mukuru in regards to the affordable housing project. You do remember that the head of state launched 1,080 bed sitters there just the other day. As and when we get that particular link, we'll be crossing over there once more. But now let's focus on the Finance Bill 2025 and the budget itself. Quickly, before I introduce my guest, let me give you a little bit of the projections that the Exchequer is giving out in the next fiscal year. The total estimate stands at 4.2 2.2 trillion shillings, while the national government expected to be allocated 2.49 trillion, with the consolidated fund services at 1.36 trillion shillings. The county governments on the share revenue will be receiving 405 billion shillings. When it comes to institution, Parliament will be receiving 42.4 billion shillings. The judiciary, who have gotten an increase from last year's fiscal projections, which was at 23 billion. Right now, they will be receiving 26.6 billion shillings, with the total revenue expected in the fiscal year to be at 3.3 trillion shillings. Grant stands at 46.9 billion shillings. Deficit at 876.1 billion shillings. When it comes to debt and debt servicing, according to data from the Central Bank of Kenya, our domestic debt is currently at 6.1 trillion shillings as of May 2025, with foreign debt at 5 trillion as of December 2024. When it comes to debt servicing, the total interest stands at 1.1 trillion. On domestic debt, 851 billion shillings, while the foreign debt stands at 246.3 billion shillings. This is the conversation that we'll be having for the better part of this morning, all the way to at least 11:55 a.m. And also we'll be keeping an eye on two critical committees, the Budget and Appropriation Committee led by Samuel Atandi, where the various committee heads of the National Assembly are currently making their submissions, and also the Finance Bill, with the hearings currently ongoing at the Edge Convention Centre, where stakeholders are making their presentation. Even some of the stakeholders will be making those presentations are here with us. They have been slated to be given a date. I'm talking about Alexander Rithi, who is the head of programs at the Institute for Social Accountability. Also joining us this morning is Sami Meli, a political analyst. Vincent Kimoso will be joining us a little bit later on. He's a policy and governance specialist. And finally, another expert here we do have is Kenneth Kahora, a tax expert from PKF. Thank you for joining us, gentlemen, this morning. Let me start with you, Alexander. In terms of the Finance Bill 2025, it is here already. The budget projections are out. What has caught your interest so far?
Thank you and for having me this morning. The finance bill and the budget are indeed out, as you have mentioned. What has caught us, maybe starting from the finance bill itself, unlike what we saw last year, the finance bill this time round does not introduce any significant new taxes, but it mainly deals with the tax administration. But there are a few issues that I'll be mentioning that I've seen in it. A number of items have been moved from zero rated to tax exempt, with a few saving clauses that we'll be going through in the course of this interview. On the expenditure side, we are seeing some sudden changes, and maybe one of the highlights is the removal of allocation to examination, which is going to mean that most parents will have to pay for exams, and we hope that the submissions that are going on in the Budget and Appropriation Committee will give us a change to some of those. We've seen some increases in recurrent expenditure in some senior government offices at the expense of cutting spending in education and health. And also we are also seeing a slight increase in the deficit, although the Treasury has revised the revenue projections much lower than what was in the BPS. We still think that the revenue projections are still higher than what we are likely to receive, looking at the slowdown in economic growth.
Mm-hmm. Kenneth, your opening remarks?
Good morning, viewers, and thank you very much for having us here. In terms of the finance bill, we have been seeing a lot of the discussions around, and the main thing is to try to notice is that the government has tried to sort of move away from trying to sort of collect a lot more revenue, and more like trying to clean up the statutes so that they are able to have a good training ground, such that they are able to collect taxes within what is allowed. We have seen a few changes in terms of them trying to move some items from exempt to standard rated, and also from zero rated to exempt, which will have a knock-off effect in terms of a lot of the products. They'll end up being a bit more expensive for the taxpayers. But overall, we've seen that the government is trying to streamline in terms of tax statutes. We are seeing some provisions that, which were sort of contradicting each other that have tried to be cleared up, such as the 24 months in terms of the VAT refunds, and they're trying to streamline all the tax statutes together. So in terms of perspective, maybe the key issue would be with the Revenue Authority trying to access trade secrets and customer data. Those are some of the really provisions that we think need to be thought about in terms of trying to ensure that data privacy is respected and the people's right that is actually entrenched in the Constitution. And what we hope is that we'll see the government sort of rethink some of these proposals, especially where data privacy is involved. But more so, we've seen that the finance bill is not as large as we've seen in the previous years. And I think this has a lot to do with the sentiments that happened last year. And we're trying to see that the government is trying to be a bit more accommodative. But at the same point, there is the push for them to want to raise additional revenue to sort of plug in the deficit.
Meli?
Good morning, viewers, and thank you, Hashim. My opening remark will be looking at the government, how it has struggled in the past to raise revenue to pay any pending bills. And we have seen the new finance bill, them raiding the digital economy, especially where the creatives are. Remember, the traditional media where we used to get print media now is all online, and therefore the government is trying to be creative and get into the digital economy. I've seen the introduction of a 5% withholding taxes for residents and 20% for non-residents, especially looking at the international investors who have come into the digital area. And therefore, it wouldn't be prudent to have them rip into our economy and they don't pay anything as revenue. And therefore, for the residents, I still think the 5% is still too high. And now, since it is in the public participation, let's see what happens. But the government more so is the reasoning behind the reading of the budget. We should go more into the implementation and the follow-up, because we see the government reading the budget and at the end of the day they end up struggling again to raise even the deficit, even the simple amount that they had projected to collect. In the recent past, we have seen the economy struggling, the money is not in circulation as far as that is concerned. But I would be interested in seeing how they are going to implement whatever they are projected and they are presented as a bill once passed, and see whether the pending bills will be paid, because most contractors are being auctioned. You see auctioneers in people's doors. We see the banks coming for the people that owe them. And remember, if they prioritize the international loans over the local loans, then they are hurting the economy without understanding it. The people need to feel it, because if the contractors, for example, who have given services that people are enjoying in the country, the roads that have been made, most of them are on loans, and the contractors are suffering. This, the government should target mostly raising income and clearing any pending bills. I'm not seeing any introduction of new developments other than finishing whatever they had already started. And as we move forward, we are looking into more collections, and the KRA should move into the implementation, because most of the time, once the bill the bill has been passed and ascended to by the president, which we expect by July 1st that it takes effect, then we expect that KRA will do its part so that the economy does not suffer.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Those are critical opening remarks from my guest. Of course, we'll talk about that issue when it comes to data privacy. The Commissioner General for KRA appeared before the Finance Committee on a Saturday. Of course, that particular concern was raised. Also, when it comes to the education matters that Alexander has has, of course, brought to attention. The chair of the Education Committee yesterday was before the Budget and Appropriation Committee, clearly stating that the 5.9 billion that was required should be reallocated from various other departments within the Education Ministry to address the concern of examination fees. Those are all the concerns that we'll be addressing in this particular program. So talk to us on our social media platforms at KBC Channel 1 and at Abdiaziz Hashim 2. But quickly, I want to take you to Diani in Kwale County, where the Connected Africa Summit 2025 is currently ongoing. And there you can have it. The ICT CS, that is William Kabogo, is currently addressing the gathering. Let's listen in.
We're all here for the good of Africa and for the good of humanity. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you so much, CS Kafogo. And just talking about that AI translator, one of our MPs, Bwana KJ, said he wants his native tongue, Gikoyo, as part of the large language models that are being used the world over. And we've seen that also ambassador from Djibouti as well, speaking in French. Je ne parle pas le français. That was a very quick lookup. But there is actually stuff happening across the continent. And I know of a startup called Vambo AI that has already done this for 40 languages. And they're going on to put more and more of our African languages onto these technological platforms. So ladies and gentlemen, now there's a launch event that we'll go into. And it's the launch or the unveiling of the Digital Work Ecosystem Report that will be done by our CS Kafogo. And for this, Bwana CS and the executives and the excellencies at the front row will exit first to the launch area, which is right outside. And for the rest of us, we'll use the back door and just make our
Well, that is the Connect Africa Summit 2025 currently happening in Diani, Kwale County. Earlier on, the ICT CS, that is William Kabogo, was able to address, of course, various stakeholders within the digital space have gathered at Diani, of course, conversing on the latest trends within the digital world, including the artificial intelligence. And you do remember that this particular summit's evolution from a local event when it comes to Connected Kenya to a continental platform for digital transformation and dialogue. And of course, this is the Connected Africa Summit 2025, which will include plenaries, executive roundtables, breakout sessions, and innovation showcases focusing on emerging technologies as well as fintech and digital public services highlights, which includes the innovation of village for local startups and smart government zone, showcasing digital transformation projects across Africa. And of course, we'll be broadcasting that live from Diani in Kwale. We do have a capable team in Diani Kwale already on ground who will be joining us in our subsequent bulletins. But recap to what we were discussing in terms of the Finance Bill 2025 and the budget. I want to go back to Alexander. Alexander, we were talking about the differences we have witnessed this particular time around. We were talking about that there are no taxes as opposed to what we have witnessed in the Finance Bill of 2024-2025. But the main question now is, where will the government get the money to fund most of the operations?
Thank you for that question. What we are seeing is an effort to try and reduce on tax expenditure. This mainly is what businesses would get through refunds and ceiling of what government is calling tax leakages. However, in the effort to try and reduce tax expenditure by reducing the number of refunds, we are likely to face some negative impacts if we are not careful. Because I've looked at a number of the items that have been moved from exempt to zero rated, meaning it will not be possible for the private sector to recover the input VAT in those areas. For instance, in the pharmaceutical industry, we've seen all raw materials being moved from zero rated to exempt. This means if you have a pharmaceutical raw material that is an intermediate good, in the sense that it has gone through some processing, during that processing there was some VAT in the inputs that were in there, then we will have challenges when it comes now to the cost of the medicine, because it will mean that the input VAT that was in that raw material that is now an intermediate product will be passed on to the consumer, which will lead to some of these goods becoming more expensive. So in our view, we need to look at what are we moving from zero rated to exempt, because if this is a direct raw material from the farm, for instance, then there is nothing to pass on to the next consumer. But if it is a product that is a raw material in this particular processing, the processing of this item, and it had come through another manufacturing process, for instance, you have industrial sugar, which is a final product in one processing plant, but a raw material in another, then the input VAT that was during the processing of the industrial sugar will be passed on to the final consumer, meaning some of these products will become more expensive. And here we have in mind medicine that are supposed to cater for chronic illnesses like diabetes, cancer, and the like. It will mean that they will have to pay more for those services. Yeah.
And Kenneth, should this not be music to the ears of Kenyans? You do know where we came from last year, and now that there are no taxes within the Finance Bill 2025, should we be cheering as Kenyans?
Well, very good question. I think the sentiment is, especially from a Kenyan perspective, is that a lot of people feel that they've been overtaxed. There have been quite a number of taxes that have come through in the last couple of years, and have sort of shrinked in terms of the disposable income that is available to the Kenyans. And in as much as there are no really significant taxes that have been introduced, I think there is a sentiment that if you're to look at the tax policy, there is actually some proposals that have been introduced, such as reducing the pay-as-you-earn rate, and also the corporate income tax rate. But we are seeing a lot of those are not really coming in. So in as much as they are not introducing new taxes, there are some extra items that they can do to actually alleviate and actually increase the disposable income for the Kenyans. So they still continue to feel the pain. And as Alex has mentioned, something like medicaments, when you move them from exempt to standard rated, it means that people will have to fork a bit more to pay for some of this. So it is, in as much as there are no really new taxes, it is still going to end up being a bit more, taxpayers will need to be ready to foot a bit more in terms of a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. And Meli, so would you argue now, as Kenyans, we have learnt our lessons, especially when it comes to the exchequer, the treasury, given that it brought out those proposals last year and this year it's a little bit different. So would you argue that they have learnt their lesson?
Yeah, the government has really learned their lesson, and what we expect as Kenyans is the ceiling of those leakages in the taxes, and also the spending. The government should cut in its spending and luxury spending. You can see right now that the per diem right now are tax-free up to 10,000. It used to be tax-free up to 2,000. Now even the civil servants will have something to smile about when they go home. But at the end of the day, we'll ask ourselves, will they now increase their movements in and out of the country to earn per diems now that they have increased the bracket to 10,000? I'm asking myself again, if now we go and make sure that this finance bill is fully implemented, the question is, what about the corruption that is in our institutions? Will they cut down and throw the net wide to get those corrupt officers who spend our money, and we don't see anything that is substantial coming back to us? Are we going to see efficiency in our government offices? Because at the end of the day, we will spend our revenue on your salaries, and at the end, and you arrive in the office at 10 and leave by 3. Will that make sense? The common Kenyan is asking, how are we going to benefit from this? Are we going to see government services being efficient the way they are in the private sector? Are we going to see the government revenue officers, the ones that were employed, doing their jobs to make sure that every business that is under the finance bill supposed to pay taxes, are they paying taxes? Now, and at the end of the day, where will the public education on Kenyans to know that this country runs on our own taxes? If we were to avoid paying taxes and at the end of the day the government doesn't get revenue, we will leave them with no option but to go for foreign loans and also more loans that are internal. So the common Kenyan is asking, after all this, what are the benefits? What benefits are we going to reap? Remember, we didn't have a finance bill that sailed through last year. So we have a 2-year backlog of a financial gap that needs to be filled. And the leadership should look into making sure that the money trickles down to the common man. At the end of the day, down there in the village, is there money circulating? Rather than having a beautiful finance bill, but at the end of the day, if a Kenyan is broke, if a Kenyan cannot meet the basic needs, if the Kenyans do not meet, are not able to pay for their children's education, and we are happy right now that the Ministry of Education has woken up to realize that Kenyans expect a lot from them. Are we going to see 87 shillings being sent to a school? The capitation, the capitation sent to schools, are they going to be timely? So that capitation should not be sent should not be received in schools towards the end of the term when the children are closing school. That tells you the head teachers, the principals would have suffered the entire period of the term, and then the money comes late when our children have suffered. We want to see the finance bill actually being implemented and prudency in the expenditure being done.
Accountability and transparency. Head over to Alexander. With those projections, you do know that given that the finance bill was dropped in the year 2024-2025 due to the Gen Z-led demonstrations. So the question is here, Alexander, does those physical projections that have been given by the Exchequer meet the realities on the ground?
Thank you. What we've seen in this current financial year, the projections of revenue have not been met due to one, dropping of the finance bill last year, the unrest that then followed about a quarter of the financial year. We didn't have very good economic activities. So therefore, the Treasury has had to revise its revenue projections. I think in Supplementary 2, they brought it down to 2.58 trillion. And we have a Supplementary 3 that is ongoing, which is likely to bring it even further down. But if you recall the budget policy statement that was released in February, the revenue projection then, ordinary revenue, was at 2.8535 trillion, which has since been brought down again to around 2.7 trillion. This means that the government has seen that it might not be possible to meet the revenue targets that they had set. And if you've seen what was in the budget policy statement, the growth projection was at 5.3% of GDP for this financial year. I've just come from a meeting this morning where the World Bank was releasing the economic update for Kenya. Yes. And the projection is that the growth for 2025 is likely to be somewhere around 4.5%, meaning all the projections that were done with an assumption of 5.3% growth in 2025 will have to come down. So therefore, even the current revenue projections of 2.75 trillion might not be met. And if you recall, sometimes in March, we did raise the alarm and we indicated that the revenue projections of 2.8 trillion were not realistic. And our projection then, using the proposed GDP growth of 5.3, were taking us to around 2.73 trillion of ordinary revenue. But now looking at now the new projections in terms of GDP growth, that revenue projection is likely to come down to a number around 2.6 trillion or thereabout. So we still see a situation where we are likely to have a higher revenue projection than actual, which will take us to another round of supplementary budgets in the next financial year.
And going to Kenneth, with that in mind, Alexander is talking about some of the key revenue projections. Now, the government has capped at this particular financial year at 3.3 trillion shillings. And we do understand that the Treasury placed that particular figure due to what they called as an economic growth. They were saying that compared to last year, the economy is slowly coming back to life as opposed to what was witnessed in last year when it comes to inflation and other factors as well, both external and internal. So the question is, Kenneth, according to you, is this achievable?
Yeah, just to glean on what Alex has said, I think we have seen in the previous years, there is always a budget that is set. But most times the budget, in terms of collections, they never actually achieve their targets. And we have seen the economy in terms of, I look at the newspapers every day and I see how many pages of auctions there are on a daily basis. And the truth is, if you look at things on the ground, they are not so rosy. In terms of businesses are struggling. People do not have enough money to actually be able to, even sort of increase their income in terms of investing in a side business or something. So when you think about the sentiment when it comes to the people, remember all this money has to be collected from the taxpayers, and for the taxpayers to be able to, in terms of collect this money, then they need to be able to make sufficient profits in the market. You need to be able to be earning a good income. And the reality is that things on the ground are not as rosy. And so it might be a very difficult target to actually meet. But we see that there is likely going to be supplementary budgets in terms of trying to adjust where the budget is vis-a-vis the collections from the Revenue Authority.
And of course, Meli, in terms of improving that economic growth, and you've just heard from Alexander and Kenneth, what areas are we likely to see the government especially ensuring that is adequately funded through the various projects that are currently ongoing? So do you think funding this particular critical project, aside from the political undertones ahead of the 2027 polls, will improve the livelihood of the common mwananchi?
Yeah, the economy cannot grow in a turbulent political environment. First, the politicians need to tone down the rhetorics and the turbulence around the country so that the economy can grow. The government should come up with more tax incentives to business people. We are seeing a situation whereby, for example, excise duty is introduced on imported goods like eggs, onions. But I'm asking myself, what about the COMESA treaties and the East African Community treaties? Remember, sometimes we have a deficit on onions and we go to Tanzania for them. The oranges sometimes come from Tanzania. Sometimes we go to Uganda for eggs. Remember, the government should also pump more. Remember, our economy mostly depends on agriculture. The agricultural sector sometimes seems neglected. But in the past, this government has seemed to come in with incentives. But we're expecting them to have more incentives for the farmers, more extension officers reach to the ground so that our farmers are taught agribusiness other than just doing agriculture for fun. We are looking at a situation whereby the government also should go deeply into the hostile environments, for example, the arid and semi-arid regions, and introduce irrigation. You saw some investor coming in Galana Kulalu irrigation scheme. And we are expecting, other than the investors coming, they shouldn't give the local farmers competition, because at the end of the day, if there is more investment in agriculture from foreign investors, that means the agricultural produce will go down in its value, will be cheaper. But at the end of the day, the farmer will suffer, because also we are looking at the inputs. For example, agricultural inputs, the pesticides, the insecticides, the fertilizers, fertilizer, and even the machinery. We have looked at in the past where farmers would walk into CMC and come out back with the tractors. Where is Agricultural Finance Corporation? We'd want to see how much has been pumped into Agricultural Finance Corporation and give farmers loans at lower interest, even if it means other government-owned institutions, lending institutions, giving farmers loans at a lower interest and per annum, whereby the initial principal loans are recovered from the produce that the farmer has got. Otherwise, if we leave the farmer to the current economic environment, the farmer will suffer. And remember, 80% of us Kenyans are farmers. Even you, Hashim, as you sit there, you must be keeping some chicken somewhere. You are doing some agricultural activities somewhere. So mostly, we are looking again into a situation whereby the government would encourage investors who come up with to use our agricultural raw materials into finished products, so that we don't export our tea as tea leaves. We want to export our tea as a finished product. We want to export our coffee as a finished product. There's no need of exporting the same coffee, then import when somebody has added value out there. If such an environment is created by the government, we will see this country grow. And the government should prioritize the local investors over the foreign investors. Thank you.
And of course, joining us is none other than Vincent Kimosope, policy and governance expert. Vincent, thank you for joining us this morning. We're conversing about the Finance Bill 2025 and the budget. Already we were here last year, we were here with you. Now this time around, it's a little bit different compared to the document that we perused through last time. So the question is to you, Vincent, as you give us your opening remarks as well, is that are this tax proposal realistic in terms of achieving the projections that have been made by the Treasury?
So since it is, I'll start with the opening remarks, then I don't know which order do you want to follow. But I think as we discuss the finance bill, it's good to appreciate the context that the country is at, looking at where we have come from and also where the country would want to go to. So in my view, I see the finance bill speaking to 5 things. One is the issue of macroeconomic stability, looking at things like inflation, issues to do with our foreign exchange. You're looking at and also even interest rates, so that because when you look at the data from the particularly private sector consumption and the loans that are be taken by the private sector, because you need the private sector in stimulating the economy, you see more needs to be done. So that is one area, macroeconomic stability. The other thing that I also see, the context in which the finance bill is being, or called the conversation and the passage of the finance bill, is just building on what I'm yet to get his name, our colleague had alluded, the importance of deepening value chains. So it is important to stimulate the agricultural sector, get more farmers, get more production, but then we need to shift conversation into productivity. So from the same tea, from the same coffee, from the same cow, from the same cotton, how do we lengthen the number of players down the value chain? How do we increase the amount of returns, so that if you're a livestock farmer, whom traditionally we've known you for selling whole cows, how do we ensure that that same farmer, he's a player in the skin, the bones, the meat? That is all the conversation around the value chain. The third thing I see is the continued investment in terms of infrastructure. You're looking at be it our roads, internet, everything that can facilitate the whole issue around national development and increase the number of economic actors in the economy. Then I think this is not new to all of us, but we have a youthful population. You're very knowledgeable, tech savvy, but the number of economic opportunities within the economy, we are not generating enough number of opportunities, and therefore it is important to see that more is done so that these young people, if it is the digital opportunities, if it's labor migration, if it is ensuring efficiency in service provision. So that is the other thing. How do we generate more opportunities, more income so that you have more actors in the economy? We have a country and a continent where its median age is 19. And actually, you don't need to be a skyrocket scientist if nothing is done about our youthful population. So a responsive education, are more linked into the tertiary sector, so that these young people, their energies can therefore be channeled productively. And then finally is the whole issue of the social enablers. You're looking at social protection. When you have more people who are dependent on those who are working, and then therefore the pressure on the employed. I remember asking you, I remember the last time I was projecting your income and your salary here, and we laughed during the break. The number of people who are employed and the way they have to stretch that shilling into either school fees, rent, transport, and also taking care of what you call the black taxes. So then therefore, this means that then the social investments, our healthcare has to work, our education, our roads, our security, so that you have more what you call the disposable income that is available among Kenyans is then available for people to not just to survive but also to invest. So that's how I would say that if we discuss the finance bill in that context, then I think one of my colleagues has pointed out that you cannot do well in an economy where there is a lot of political noise. I don't know, you can feel like we're almost in 2027 March, yet we are in, this is the month of May actually, of 2025. Now the challenge is politics and economics are one and the same thing. You're looking at one coin. It's about control for people. So if you use the markets to be able to manage, plan your people, that is economics. But if you use then power, numbers, noise, and all that, then you are in the political space. So they cannot be, you cannot remove one the other, but it is important that even as the political discourse is happening, it is encouraging that we are discussing our issues, we are discussing our finance bill. But when now it skews into the space of fear, violence, and all that, there is a saying, this is not economics now, but this is social setup. Pesa ipendi kelele, if I'm allowed to translate it in Swahili, but actually Swahili is our national language, that there is something about political stability that you should have before you can discuss economics. So the message then I would implore to our policymakers, I'll implore to the political leadership that is across those in government and those who are in the opposition, is that there is need to take a break so that we can allow the country to function, the economy, because when people don't have jobs, when people don't have food, it knows no tribes, it knows no region, and it knows no color or race.
Indeed, even the Speaker of the National Assembly, that is Moses Wetangula, when that particular document of the finance bill was tabled before the National Assembly, he urged the parliamentarians to discuss it. First of all, before even discussing it, read and understand that particular document before going to discuss it in gatherings and funerals as well. Also, we are focusing on the Budget and Appropriation Committee that is currently at one of the hotels here in the capital, of course, conversing with state departments and especially the National Assembly committees. And we do understand that the Finance and National Planning Committee chairperson, that is Kimani Kuria, will be appearing before that particular committee. You do know that is the committee that is tasked with dealing with the Finance Bill 2025. And of course, when it comes to fiscal accountability, the Auditor General will be there as well. But I want to go back to you, Alexander. We're talking about in terms of the variety in terms of budget cuts, given that you do know that there are various sectors that have witnessed budget cuts in various aspects when it comes to that particular allocation. You talked about the education sector. Even the chair of the Education Committee of the National Assembly was able to appear before the Budget and Appropriation Committee, clearly stating that the 5.9 billion required had to be shifted from another key area to be brought to deal with examination fees. So with this in mind, are we likely to see more borrowing? Is that the solution?
Thank you. What we see is a situation where you have overprojected your revenues and then we have pressures in expenditure. This will automatically push you into a deficit that is higher than projected, meaning then you find yourself in a situation where you have to borrow more. And the numbers we've seen presented to the National Assembly, and you had mentioned this, we are seeing a deficit of about 876 billion, of which 284 billion is supposed to be funded externally, and 592 or thereabout is supposed to be funded from domestic sources. Looking at the current financial year, we had a target of domestic borrowing of 450 billion, but we have so far gone all the way to around 600 billion. There are a few numbers higher there. But what this is doing, and we even saw it in the BPS in February, it has led to what we call the clouding out effect, where the private sector cannot access loans as easily as they should. Therefore, this leads to a decline in economic activity. And looking at the numbers that we are looking at being presented to the Budget and Appropriations Committee, and the demands that are coming, for instance, the example you've given of the examination fee, which actually is higher than 5.9 billion. If you add the new exam, the KEPSE, I think the number is coming to around 11 billion. So even what the committee suggested that be reallocated from other areas, bringing us to around 5.9 billion, we still need an addition of 5 billion from somewhere. So this will mean that we'll have to increase our fiscal deficit, and increasing the fiscal deficit, looking at our reduced debt capacity in the external market, we are likely to raid more on the domestic front, which will again see us going into a difficult situation economically. If you look at lending to private sector, the numbers that have been released this morning by the World Bank are indicating that we are sliding down. We are having lesser and lesser money being accessed by the private sector. The other converse number that we are seeing, which is quite glaring, is the number of non-performing loans. Non-performing loans means these are people who are into business and they are not in a position to pay their loans. It's increasing at a very high rate. And if we continue with the expenditures as we are seeing, it will mean then we will borrow more from the domestic market. So these non-performing loans will go higher. And I think my colleague here did mention that the number of auctions in our dailies these days is quite worrying. And we are likely to continue with that, plus an increase in the pending bills. We've seen government trying to come up with the pending bills verification committee to see the bills that could be paid. Yes. But looking at the budget estimates, I've not seen any allocation towards payment of these pending bills, meaning they are likely to form fast charge in the next financial year, which means then whatever you have projected to spend for the next financial year will already be eaten up by the pending bills. So we are not seeing a very good picture going forward looking at the fiscal side.
And
can I
still on the same? Okay.
I wanted to talk about I wanted to speak about this the pending bills. I think if the interest rates, this is of course the responsibility of the central bank, can continue to decline, because I think by now remember they reduced it by 50 points. It's now 10, if I'm not mistaken, 10.7%. That's the CBR rate. If that can continue to come down, and then as I said, of course, we put our political hygiene in order. Yes. Then the element of a private sector, because it's very expensive you can imagine getting loans still between 13 to 16%. As the economy is continuing to recover, it's not easy for the private sector. So my recommendation would be on two fronts. One is what my colleague has pointed out, the clearance of pending bills, so that money is pumped into the private sector. I think we may even want to consider an economic stimulus, if that can be, so that I remember the last time we had an economic stimulus was when the former president was the minister responsible for treasury, because even when we are calculating economic growth, private consumption, government activity in the economy is still very critical, so that we can be able to get to where. So the interest rates coming down, payment of pending bills, and then continued economic stimulation, I think for me, is something we may want to consider, so that we can get the economy back on track. Again, coming back to what I had alluded, we are a youthful country. The economic opportunities, they need to be created, so that then the energy can be translated positively towards taking the country forward. Sorry, I just wanted to make that input.
Okay, thank you. Kenneth, let me go to you now. Vincent has raised a very pertinent issue here when it comes to economic stimulus packages. We witnessed that in previous administration. The current administration believes in producing more than giving out stimulus packages to every sector. So in terms of financing sectors such as the industrial sector, agricultural sector, what needs to be done so that we evade that particular situation of ever giving economic stimulus packages every time we are experiencing austerity measures or budget cuts?
Okay, very good. I think when it comes to fiscal stimulation, here we'd be looking at, if you look at the finance bill as it is, you look at something like, let's say, the tourism industry. So in as much as the tourism industry is being faced by competition by our neighboring countries, you look at the focus on this finance bill to sort of change the VAT status of the inputs that they use to manufacture the hotels and the lodges in which the tourists would come. So you find that, yes, in as much as there is one side that you want to create the stimulus, but on the other hand, there's some tax proposals that have been there that are sort of robbing off that part of, in terms of trying to stimulate investments in the economy. Another very good example is when you have tax losses expiring in 5 years. It means that any new entrant who's coming in to invest in any capital-intensive whatever they're trying to do, maybe manufacturing or is it the extractive industry, you find that then the stimulus is really not going to play its part, because now you stifle investment on this one end, such that now for any new person who wants to come in and generate positively, create jobs and tax revenue, you have pay as you earn and all the other taxes that an enterprise would pay while they come into, into operation. But on the other hand, we are seeing that there are some proposals that are coming in that sort of stifle that on the other end. And what we are seeing is like you give on one side and then you take on the other. So I think what the government needs to think is that there needs to be actually, one is the stability in terms of tax laws, so that when a person makes the investment, they are sort of certain that they are able to recoup their investment within the time that is required, without there being significant tax changes that would affect the business model in its entirety. So the proposal would be, I think the government needs to look at the tax policy and actually come to implement it so that there is certainty in terms of how companies do business. And once that certainty comes, then companies are able to invest more, grow more, and create more jobs and pay more taxes. And at the end, that will come and reduce the overall deficit that will be there at the end of the year.
And that is a very interesting one, because mainly last year, what many people, especially stakeholders and companies, even investors who came before the finance committee led by Kure Kimani, is that they were asking for certainty. But in terms of coming up with a bill that will ensure there is certainty for not just the stakeholders, but the investors at the end of the day, is there such a move or a document that will ensure that when you come to our country, we will give you tax incentives, we will not tax you just to suppress whatever you want to do in this particular country to boost our economic growth. So in terms of certainty, what needs to be done by the Exchequer to boost confidence within our investors?
I think the Cabinet Secretary had promised that we are going to do away with the yearly finance bill so that we have something that is predictable. A turbulent economic environment, especially occasioned by the government through finance bills. For example, introducing this tax this year, reducing it next year, doubling it another year, does not sound well to an investor. And therefore, we need something that is predictable, as my colleague has said. As an investor, if you know that the VAT will remain at 16%, it will remain at 16%. And if it will have to go, it will basically go down rather than going up. So I'm looking at a situation whereby there should be an introduction whereby an investor can be able to recoup what he invested first before starting to pay taxes. Unless that one is done, and I think with such you have to write to the Treasury CS to exempt you on such, but it should be by law. Other than writing to the Treasury CS, sometimes they don't even see your letters. You would have written a letter, you find that it has piled in the in tray. At the end of the day, they have never looked at it. So if these incentives are there, for example, and by law, not by a word of mouth, as the Treasury CS had said. But I think they have done the first move by reducing the changes in the finance bill, as you have seen in this one. Yes. There are very few changes that have been brought in place. I'm still also waiting, perhaps the diaspora remittance will increase this year because there are quite a number of young men who are sent out to work through the government initiated job such as abroad. Perhaps also they are aiming at collecting some taxes from diaspora remittance. I remember there was a promise also on a diaspora bond where the Kenyans who are abroad, perhaps sometimes they send money and their relatives eat the money. By the time they come back from those foreign countries, they find a semi-permanent house, yet they had budgeted for a permanent house. So if there are such bonds for them, for example, where they would invest in, and once they come, for example, invest in 2, 3, 5 years, 10 years, once they come back, they are able to recoup with interest. I think the government would do much. But coming back to your question, the government need to do a lot, especially, and stop much saying. The other day, somebody was saying, drop the mic, put on the action. Because there is too much that is being said in this country and very little action that is that follows. So we want to have a country, for example. You have seen the US just finished election the other day. You don't know even who is the next presidential candidate. But for us, we finished the other day. We have several presidential candidates running around. Somebody landing and disturbing 5 counties on his way home. That's there's something wrong with ourselves. There's something wrong. Imagine collecting over 5,000, 10,000 young men on the way escorting you, and yet they stop the business. You see, and I usually say there is a lot of money in this country. It is how we collect it. It is how we spend it. It is the honesty in ourselves, because there is also a sense of patriotism. Because if you eat from the same pot, you have been put there to be in charge of our pot to cook the food, but you make sure you eat the fat before you bring to the table. At the end of the day, you are killing the entire family, which is the Kenyan family. So we should look at, for example, the other day I boarded a matatu somewhere, and I would see them giving out 100 shillings to police officers. Then I would ask, how many times have you given? That was 10 a.m. How many times have you given? He told me that is the 5th time I'm giving out. And before even he finished saying the 5th time, there was another one. So there are other people, tax collectors out there that collect taxes that does not come into our consolidated fund. So if we seal those loopholes, and we need leaders who can take action rather than the rhetoric. You see the other day, the CS of health, once he was sworn in, and you have seen Shah starting to work, it is now on its feet. The other day it was crawling and wriggling on the ground. Right now it is taking the first few steps. We want such leadership whereby if you are given a responsibility, you do it. You don't care who is saying. Do it as if you are doing it for God.
Okay. And of course, in just a few, we'll be taking a short commercial break. This is The Conversation. Talk to us on our social media platforms at KBC Channel 1 and at Abdiaziz Hashim and 1 as well. We're focusing on the Finance Bill 2025 and the budget. And any moment from now, as and when we get those particular links, we're focusing on the Budget and Appropriation Committee, as well as the Finance and Planning, National Planning Committee, that are currently holding various committee sessions, meeting stakeholders and key state government institutions when it comes to the Budget 2025-2026. As I told you earlier on, the total estimation currently stands at 4.2 trillion shillings, with majority of the chunk heading over to the national government at 2.49, with a consolidated fund expected to get 1.36 trillion, with the county governments getting 4 or 5 billion shillings. Still with us is none other than Alexander Rithi, the head of programs, the Institute for Social Accountability, Sami Melia, political analyst, Vincent Kimosope, policy and governance expert, and Kenneth Kahora, a tax manager at PKF. We're taking a short breather, but when we come back, the conversation continues on the other side, so don't go too far.
Sasa unupuzi gani?
I've only been married for a few years and already akona mtoto nje.
Sijui unataka niseme nini.
It is called owning up to your mistake. And honestly, mbona tukuamka tuende?
In fact, pigia huyo mama Kim, mwambie utaki kazi. Ndatafuta msichana mwingine. Nafikiri hizo nyumba zingine hazina shida zao.
Need some time. Kwa sababu pende usipende, we need to talk.
Unaishi wapi?
Bangladesh mheshimiwa.
Bangladesh ni India ama ni hapa?
Sio India, hapa hivi Longai mheshimiwa. KWS.
Ndio.
Umeshawahi kuliwa?
Na nani?
Kuliwa na nani? Kuliwa na nani?
Na fish.
Na nini?
Na fish.
Bado sijakuliwa na fish.
Bado. First of all, you have said you are a terrorist. Mheshimiwa Maki hiyo
amesema
hapa mko kwa hatari saa hii.
Sikiza. Amesema yeye ni tourist.
How do you run when the hyena is just there? How can you run?
Si uongee lugha ile utaelewa. Sasa hii kizungu unangangana na wewe.
Tunaelewana kisungu.
Hakuna kitu tunaelewana.
Kwa nini wakati fisi nimeua fisi ndio mnakuja kunishika? Why?
Hao ni wadudu ambao wanapatikana kwa uchafu. Fisi ni mnyama ambaye analindwa na sheria.
So mimi ni mchafu. You want me to say mimi ni mchafu? Baby face kama mimi ni mchafu.
Angalia nywele yako kwa pasi.
Hiyo sura yako imekunjana ni baby face.
It's all about nurses.
We spend 24 hours with the patient.
You're lucky as a patient to spend an hour in 24 hours with a doctor.
The nurse ensures that preparation of all equipment, instrumentation is done.
Your vital signs are okay, your BP is okay, 120/71, and also heart rate is 83, which is very normal.
We keep that spirit of being kind, no matter how the condition of the patient, wakuwe tu wazuri kwao.
It's about compassion, courage, and the quiet strength that nurses bring every single day.
The first person who touches a human being is a nurse. And the person who gives you that peaceful goodbye during the logic end is a nurse.
And as the world pauses to honor nurses, we share the story of the people who show up not for recognition, but for a simple, powerful mission: to care.
Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. You're watching News Check. This is the second hour. The conversation continues. It's all about the Finance Bill 2025 and the Budget 25-26. You do know that the Treasury Cabinet Secretary John Badi in the coming weeks is expected to appear before Parliament and present that particular document and of course read it out for the legislators and Kenyans alike to see which sectors the government has prioritized in the next fiscal year. My guests are still here with me. Alexander Rithi, the heads of program, the Institute for Social Accountability, Sam Emeli, political analyst, Vincent Kimosop, policy and governance expert, Kenneth Kahora, a tax manager, PKF. We are waiting for various links, especially from the corridors of the August House. Any moment from now, the Budget and Appropriation Committee, as well as the Finance Committee, given that various stakeholders are appearing before that particular committee, before they embark on a countrywide public participation exercise, before tabling the report before the House, so that the MPs can consider and pass that particular and adopt rather that particular report ahead of the budget reading expected in the coming weeks. Let me go back to Vincent. Kimosop, we were talking earlier about the projections that the Exchequer has given out, but in terms of those policies, how will they impact especially SMEs and those especially informal sector? You do know that the informal sector has been evading the taxman for over years now. So are you still confident that KRA will be able to get these people who are working in the informal sector with the employees? We are around about 2 to 4 million thereabout in the country. So how will these people be able to back the taxes the government is expecting to collect through the taxman?
I think if you look at the tax bill, the Finance Bill 2025, the central message that I pick, or the overall theme, is that there is an appreciation that the country, people are averse to more taxes. So you can see there is a lot of focus on tax efficiency, strengthening the fiscal authority, that's the KRA, and also where possible, for example, see how to have more disposable income. Like now, that's why, for example, the recommendations on the issue of pension, then the per diem. So you can see a deliberate effort to respond to the overall the policy context, which is, hey, people, no new taxes. And therefore, a lot of tax efficiency, the issue of also, where it's possible, give the people, see how they can have more money to spend within the economy. Now, coming to the informal economy, they're actually the biggest part in terms of when you look at the main challenges of the SMEs, which we call it Juakali, is an issue of organization and also the issue of how, as in, it's, you know, the payroll tax, the people already in employment, you know, the bank accounts where the money, they can easily be captured when you are talking about new taxes. But a framework and a way of organizing the informal sector is the main issue. And I think for me, I will say three things on how to speak to that sector. One is really leveraging on digitalization. If you look at if you go to Gikomba, you know, these people, you'll find either they accept payments using their mobile number, using a till number. So digitalization would be a very good way. Then that sector, they also respond to incentives. You do a good road, you ensure the market is clean, everybody has a stall, well known, and that would be one of the ways of onboarding these people. And then also, the other thing is digitalization, infrastructure, so that their work is dignified. Then I would also want to talk about the whole issue of education. I would want to say that when we are talking about onboarding such sector, we are speaking about the tax morale. We tax for 5 reasons. We tax to raise revenue, we tax to redistribute that revenue, we tax so that we can reprice. Like, for example, things that have negative externalities like alcohol, you know, this they call the sin tax. We also tax so that the voice of the people, like in the US, no taxation without representation. And then finally, to balance trade. So when those who are in the informal sector can see clearly that there is a deliberate effort for the dignifying of what they do, and then ensuring that it's acknowledged, and also strengthening frameworks for data collection. For example, do we know how many people are handling, for example, onions in Market Y, and then zoning them? So I think I would not condemn the Juakali wholesale that they are evading taxes. I think there is a responsibility, both those who are in that sector, together with also strengthening the infrastructure so that they can pay because they are part of this country. I think KRA has this rallying call, Tulipe Ushuru, Tujitegemee. And once people know very clearly that it is my taxes that they can link this road. We had a discussion, just let me give this illustration. We had a conversation, actually I was moderating a panel session for SMEs, players and startups. And we had representatives from Kirdi, from KIE, that is the Kenya Industrial Estates. We had representatives from the ministry, all the way up KRA, and then finally, also the SME players. And a gentleman from KRA said that one of the things that Kenyans easily identify when it comes to taxes is, for example, money given to CDF. Because in the village, you can be able to see that building was built using CDF. But they are not able to see that that CDF is actually the tax collections that were done through the fiscal agency, the KRA. So what does that tell you? There is need to what is it, the whole of government approach, whereby people can see, you gave us this amount of money, this is what was done, and this is the return. And progressively, when that is done, then people will start seeing, look at the market, for example. The local, which is not local, the county government is responsible for management of market and everything. If you talk to those retailers in the market and says, we paid 50 shillings in the morning, we can see our toilets are clean, there is security, the lights are on, and I'll tell you clearly, if you've been, I have worked in a market, the people will respond. The same thing will happen even at the national level. I think it was our colleague was talking about SHA, the contributions that we are making through payroll tax towards social health authority. I can tell you, if people can see clearly that we paid this, we went to hospital, and this is what it is doing, then the tax morale is going to go up.
And Alexander, aside from boosting the morale of Kenyans, especially in the informal sector, given that they do make a lot of money and actually they contribute as well at the end of the day to our economic growth, so how can we improve their morale at the end of the day so that they can start paying for these particular taxes? Because relying on employees' pay slip alone will not drive the country's economy.
Okay, thank you. The first thing, and I would want to agree with Vincent, is to ensure that every Kenyan, wherever they are, they can relate the taxes they pay with the services they are receiving. If you cannot relate the two, then you will still have challenges with paying taxes. And one of the things that we could do, especially with the informal sector, is ensure that we have those incentives that we are offering to them. If you are in a market, for instance, it is clean, you have water, you have proper sanitary facilities, and therefore you will see where your money is supposed to go. Two, we also need to formalize some of this informal sector. And part of it is by ensuring that, for instance, we have mechanics are registered, they are in cooperatives or in groups that have a structure. And from that angle, even if they are informal traders or whoever they are in structures that are recognized. Right now, if you look at even our political scene, anybody who wants to say something and you need an audience that is unsolicited, you run to a market because there are very many people there. But whenever we need to get the views of these traders, it is difficult because they are not organized. But if they were organized, look at the case of doctors, for instance. If you want to talk to doctors, you know that you have to go through KMPDU. If you want to talk to teachers, you know you have to go through KNUT or KUPET or whichever. If you want to talk to the lecturers, you know where to go through. But for our traders, you just show up in Gikomba or in Githurai and you have an audience. But when we need to hear from them, there is no avenue. So we need, first of all, to ensure that there is that formalization, they have structures in place, and we are offering services to them. That way, they will have the motivation to even pay. If you look at the happiest country in the world, as it is said, Finland, if you look at their income tax, it's one of the highest. I think it's around 60 in some of those Scandinavian countries, compared to ours, which is at 30, 32.5 and 35, and we are complaining especially about the 35. But the reason why they are the happiest country, most of those in the Scandinavian part of the world, is because their services work, their taxes work for them. In this part of the world, you will pay the 30 or 30 whatever percent that you're paying, then you'll still pay for your health insurance, notwithstanding the fact that you're still paying for the social health insurance. You will be forced to, even in some instances, pay for schooling, because there is a way in which you, especially the middle class in Nairobi, will see the schools, the public schools are not offering services the way they would want. Even when it comes to security, most people you'll see they have additional security on top of the police, and so on and so forth. If you go to our roads, whenever your feeder roads are not properly done, you don't have proper lighting and so on. But if you go to those countries where they're paying very high taxes, which we cannot accommodate here, then their out of pocket for healthcare does not exist. They have free healthcare, they don't pay for education, their roads are doing perfectly. Therefore, all those people have an incentive to pay. But in our part of the world where you have to spend part of what remains to provide public good services to yourselves, then there is a challenge. So we need to formalize the informal sector and ensure that their taxes are working for them to have the incentive to pay. Right now, if you go down to downtown Nairobi and you want to tell people to pay income tax, for instance, you have a big challenge, because they'll tell you this road is not properly done, we are not seeing where our money is going. When you look at our budget, we are seeing increases in renovation of State House, for instance. We are seeing increases in some senior government offices, but we are not seeing what is supposed to come to us in terms of paying for examination fees and others. That is where the challenge is. Where are we spending? And I think looking at what government has done this time around, with what I would call a friendly finance bill compared to what we had last year, then our focus as Kenyans now needs to shift. We need now to look at where are our taxes being spent, on what and who is spending them, because that is the next frontier. Thank you.
And to boost that particular accountability and transparency at the end of the day, Kenneth, as a tax expert, what are we looking at, especially when it comes to the Finance Bill 2025? There are no taxes this time around, but as a tax expert there, what are some of these key issues that we should be looking out for in the Finance Bill so that it can inform us at the end of the day ahead of the budget reading?
Yeah, okay, very good. I think I'll just add on to what Alex was talking about in terms of when your tax is actually used is put to good use, then taxpayers will not have a problem with footing some of these taxes. And so maybe what some of the things we could see are sort of, in one hand, we are looking at universal health care coverage, yes. But when you look at the finance bill, when it comes to building specialized hospitals with over 50 beds, we are seeing that they're actually moving that from exempt to standard rated. And so what it means is that in the construction of the hospitals, the investors who are going to come in will actually have to foot a bit more in terms of the taxes. And that leaves you wondering, if you get the people to pay more, yet the people actually really need the services, so for example, the medical services, then there's sort of a disconnect in terms of where we want to be and where the tax laws are trying to take us. Let me give you another example. The manufacture of local motor vehicles, where more than 30% of the inputs are actually from an original equipment manufacturer here in Kenya, those were actually VAT exempt. And now we are seeing this being moved to also standard rated. So the question would be is, when we have a policy like that where we want 30% of, for you to get the exemption, 30% of the inputs must come from the local people. So when you remove that exemption, and there's also the additional one in terms of tax, there are preferential tax rates if you're to get to 50% of the OEM requirements. So we're seeing when you move away from this, then you sort of discourage investments in those sort of sectors. So we are trying to see, in as much as we are trying to improve specific sectors, the finance bill ends up sort of working against the positive efforts that the government is trying to do. Another good example is when it comes to affordable housing. Same thing, we have the inputs being moved from exempt to standard rated, and that means when you're constructing these buildings, you actually have to incur more. Yet at a point where the government is trying to increase the uptake of people when it comes to affordable housing. So we think that the taxes in themselves need to speak to what the government is actually trying to achieve, and we feel at times there is a disconnect in terms of you can bring an exemption this year and next year it is removed. So, so the purpose of that exemption coming is not really maintained, and you end up not achieving 100% of what the intended purpose of that exemption was. Yeah.
And of course, the certainties, the hardest currency to receive in the globe right now. Let me go to Meli. Meli, this issue was raised by Vincent, and also Kenneth was talking to it in terms of ensuring. The reason why we brought this particular devolution, advent of devolution, is to have more resources going to the Mwananchi down there. Kimosop talked earlier about NGCDF. Kenyans are able to see schools being built, police stations up and running, Ngao offices also being built, and even hospitals and roads at the end of the day. But there's this conversation that is currently ongoing in terms of removing the NGCDF from the legislators, so at the end of the day they can oversight these particular funds and give the funds to the county governments. So when it comes to even budgeting of the country's physical projections and requirements at the end of the day, is this feasible?
As my colleagues have said it before, is that once the developments are visible, paying taxes will not be an issue. I have seen Kenyans even rioting. Sometimes I've seen the drivers, truck drivers who are carrying machine cut stones, especially in Kiambu area and Darugo. Sometimes they would close the road and say, we will not pay cess because this road is not made. If Kenyans were to see that whatever we are paying is doing this, whatever we are paying is doing this, and that brings me back to what Kimosop was talking about, that we need to put structures in place so that if something has to be taxed, we see the ripple effect, the immediate ripple effect of that tax. If, for example, you are building markets, at the end of the day, you expect the mechanics to pay taxes, yet they don't have a structured place where they work. We have market zones, but we don't have a mechanics zones where the government has put aside and say all mechanics are here. And therefore, they can be structured and put together so that the way the Matatu sector was handled, and now we have circles that work. The same way other institutions, for example, the coming up of over 400 markets at the moment, it will be easier for government at that time now to collect these taxes and tell the traders that this market was built through taxes, we want to build more or expand this one. And if they see it within the year that actually they promised that they would expand this and it is expanding, it becomes easier and understandable. The Kenyans out there riot because their taxes sometimes are misused. And you find, for example, if this is an elected representative, he has come with CDF, he has come with the county funds, for example, that are allocated every year, and has done, for example, ECD classrooms in our environment that are better than what they were. It will be easier to ask a Kenyan that we need more taxes to do more of this. But if such things are not visible. For example, you go to one constituency, almost all roads are tarmacked. But you go to another one, they have a single tarmac road or zero. For example, we were being told about, was it Dadaab or which constituency, that has never seen a tarmac road except that the one that is being constructed at the moment. So how would you tell those residents that we need you to pay taxes yet they don't see? The biggest casualty has always been the salaried employee, because he or she has always carried the economy of the country. If we go down, for example, that CDF, if it is put in law so that it is run in a very professional way, and the politician has no way of manipulating it. We have seen politicians being re-elected because the CDF committee within his watch or oversight has done a better job. Then it shows that those people are appreciating the work that has been done. Otherwise, if we keep continuing and not closing the tax loopholes that are there in the country, if we are not closing on corruption, we want to see institutions working like EACC, whereby we cannot say the EACC has been sent. It should go both for the small man and the big man at the same time. All the fishes should be caught in the same net in an equal way, so that it looks like justice is being done. If the National Police Service, for example, were professional in what they do, they stop the thug way of doing work. They get you from nowhere, you have not even been summoned anywhere, you don't know whether you committed a crime, only to be found that you are being whisked. You see, those are the things that make people angry. At the end of the day, the professionalism, where is it? In Tanzania, you cross over to that country, you cross as a way bridge without, they tell you go back to the way bridge. And they even escort you to the way bridge. If they find you over speeding, they give you a ticket where you have to pay immediately, or go to a court that is on the roadside where you are given a fine. So things should work in this country so that at the end of the day, the government is struggling, should not be struggling explaining what is done. They say if it is working, then why use so many words in explaining it? If it is working, people will see it. Waswahili husema kizuri chajiuza, kibaya chajitembeza. Anything good done will be seen. For example, of late, people now are saying, oh, so affordable housing were going on actually, because now they can see houses mushrooming in every in every county, people would go to a hospital and say, oh, there's a gentleman the other day, he was a very tough critic of SHA, and he wanted to see an orthopedic, and he has been referred several times because he didn't have the funds. The other day he went to the hospital and he was saying, thank you, kumbe this thing is working. So if things are working, collecting tax will not be a problem. If corruption is on its low, because sometimes you are told to pay income tax, for example, at 10% of your income, or at whatever percentage is there, then yet there is another loophole. For example, the police have collected half of it, the other tax revenue collectors have come and they have taken a bit, then they come again in a formal way requesting for the same. It becomes difficult for a trader.
But let me, I think it is good to... No, I was saying, let me be a prophet of hope. I usually take this position at some point when we do the conversation. Hashim, I don't think that for some of us who follow this process very long, for quite some time, that there is a time we have had such level of robust debates around, for example, the finance bill. Yet finance bill has always been, we've had finance bill for every budget year. I think I want to commend the people and also commend us as a country that we may not be where we want to be, but we have, this is a 2-hour conversation, Hashim, discussing the finance bill. So the conversation in the country, as Alex was saying, like, yes, we are happy, we are having a conversation on how the revenue raising measures, but we are raising this revenue for a reason. So how do we move the conversation into, yes, you collected 10 billion, what have you done with the 10 billion? Is this what we plan for? I would want to say this, just to add to why is it that people are saying ECDF inafanya kazi? Is because there was no school. Today, there is a school. We may have challenges about the constitutionality, or should the members of parliament manage, that's a all separate conversation. But one thing you cannot deny is that certain segments of the country says, hey, enyewe ECDF, emefanya nini? Emefanya kazi. So, which is in itself feedback. Look at the amount of hit the finance bill 2024 raised. We have a finance bill in 2025, but you noticed across the country, because there is a feeling that, because the spirit of the current finance bill, not many taxes, no new taxes have been put or increased. There is an appreciation that our voice has been heard. Now, you can see, even you are alerting viewers that we will send links. The finance committee is going to receive submissions. I think for me, I would want to say that we are making progress as a country, and it is important that we don't lose sight on the journey of progress, because we can say, now that we've been heard, we take a break from now moving into the next phase, which is, now that you've raised this much money, what have you done? I was one of the persons who was appointed as to the technical, the task force on public debt. And one of the things that, if you look at the terms of reference, of course we were not able to do undertake the assignment because of court order. But one of the things that I was talking to a friend of mine who asked me, do you really want to do this thing? I said, I think it's good to have a broader conversation, for example, on our public debt. Because one of the reasons why we are where we are today is because when your payments from your collection, 2.7 trillion, when you already are over 1 trillion in terms of the amounts of money that you're paying towards debt. So what happens? Your fiscal space, the amount of money that remains for development, and recurrent expenditure is actually constrained. So I would want to say that, Hashim, that if we can continue in this journey, and let's not have a discussion on the finance bill. Don't invite me 1 year down the line. I think maybe at some point, because we have the reports that the control of budget does the quarterly reports on how the budget is being. If we can now move from the 1 year circles to the quarterly conversation, because even I think even the fiscal authority, that's KRA, releases monthly reports on how much they have collected, so that it becomes a balanced conversation. We make corrections at the right time. Because, Alex, if for example, we have a new supplementary, because ordinarily I don't like the culture of supplementary, because once you've done a budget, why are we doing a supplementary? But if you are able to show that why we are doing a supplementary is because we had projected this much, but from the look of things, we will not get that. That's why we have to do. What is the name? When you have to move some money from reallocation. I picked something from a former cabinet secretary responsible for health, and she said one time, she told the technical people, if you explain to me this thing, she was not a medical doctor, but she said, if I understand what you are saying, the people are going to understand. So we are not dealing with, we may be dealing with complicated issues and challenges, but I think the people are not as complicated, if only that we can be able to break down and pack these issues in a language that, and at the time where some of these issues get to them at the right time.
Okay. Alexander?
Thank you. I just wanted to put my word on CDF. You may be aware that we have been in this CDF journey for enough years. And if you look at, now that we are talking about the budget, if you look at the budget for 25-26, it only allocates money for CDF in 25-26. Going forward, there is no allocation. Because this CDF and the way it's functioning was stopped by the Supreme Court, and the High Court, Court of Appeal and Supreme Court following that. And the reason is not because CDF is bad and there is nothing wrong with what CDF is doing, but the problem is the how. And the Supreme Court did, and even the High Court did raise issues on the separation of powers, where I think Hashim had mentioned this, where the legislators or the MPs have only 3 responsibilities or 3 roles as per the Constitution. That is representation, legislation, and oversight. Yes. So anything that touches on them managing any executive function would then bring conflict. And that is the challenge that we are having, or the country is having with CDF. And if you followed what was happening yesterday in Malawi, the Constitutional Court of Malawi also nullified the CDF guidelines in Malawi. It from here. And the jurisprudence was picked from here. And the argument was the same, that there is a problem with separation of powers. Yes. And if you recall, CDF was a very noble idea in 2003 when Honorable Bokare brought it on the floor of the House, because it was supposed to devolve resources to the constituency level. But come 2010, we have a devolved system of government. So then that nullifies the whole of this argument of CDF. And I'm not saying CDF is a bad idea, and we have no problem with money going down to the lowest level possible. But we have to adhere with the Constitution that we give to ourselves. Article 1 of the Constitution says we the people give to ourselves this Constitution. Therefore, we have a responsibility as the people to abide by it until such a point where now we find that we need to amend it. And amending it should not be to the favor of some. And recall, Article 255 talks about referenda. And it also provides, the same Constitution provides that the National Assembly was supposed to come up with a law that determines what constitutional amendment goes through a referenda. The current one we are seeing, nobody knows who decided it's supposed to go through Article 256, where it is now through a parliamentary initiative, and it is not a 255 initiative that would go through a referendum, because we don't have that law. So those are the issues that we have with that CDF amendment and CDF, not the money getting to the people, but it's the how. Can I ask?
I think because in my journey of advocacy and engagement and working, one of the things I've appreciated is the supply side and the demand side of issues. I think, Alex, one of the things we may want, and this may be a suggestion to TISA, would be how do we, what were the, since we're doing the final allocation to CDF in the current fiscal year and none beyond this, would be what are the lessons, the good, for example, from the experience in the implementation of CDF that as we use the county government framework, that we should not lose it, even as we advocate for more resources. Why am I saying this? Is because I don't want to throw away the baby together with that, with the pan, so that we are true to the separation of powers, we are true to strengthening and consolidating the gains on devolution, but also this issue, because devolution was meant to address 3 things. 1, devolve power to the people. 2, devolve resources, but also devolve opportunities. Because I like the element of the devolution was able to succeed to some extent because of lessons, I believe, also from CDF management. I'm saying this, if we can be able to do that, even this conversation, because the limitation Parliament has made at the moment, they have made the amendment a parliamentary, it's about the MPs. If they can get this thing to move away so that organizations, as in more actors, so that ultimately the win is not the parliamentarian, but the win is the Kenyan, who is a sovereign, as outlined in the in Article 1 of Katiba.
Let me give Alexander a chance to respond before I move on to Kenneth and Meli.
Thank you. I'll make it short. To respond to the question that he has asked, what are those good things that we have learned from CDF? When CDF started, it had a participatory budgeting sort of element in it, where the people themselves would say, we have a challenge with this bridge here, and then it would go all the way up to being funded under CDF. There is something called participatory budgeting. It started in the 70s in Brazil, and the World Bank has been trying to introduce it in Kenya, and you can read the case of Makueni, where a portion of the budget is left for the people to decide what they want. And this process starts from the village, it goes to the sub-location, goes to the ward, the sub-county, all the way to the county. And a particular portion of the budget is decided directly by the people, because they are the ones that come up with the projects. We could have a similar arrangement, picking from the lessons that we have picked from CDF, and such allocations do not require an amendment to the Constitution. Article 206(1) provides for such instances. And participatory budgeting is something that we can work on, and I am sure government would be interested to come up with something like that. And this can happen both at the county level, because we have some functions that belong to the counties, and also the national government. Of course, the national government would be a bit more complicated, because then dealing with villages, coming up to county, and then that sort of a thing would be a challenge. But then we can still use the same model of constituencies to have a participatory project coming from a certain constituency, and it finds its way into the budget, because the framework that we have for budgeting can accommodate that. We do not need the current constitutional amendment. And I'm not a lawyer, but the amendment as is trying to amend Article 204 of the Constitution. And Article 204, sub-article 6, has a sunset clause that says that that entire article will cease operations after 20 years. So now if we amend an article that has a sunset clause, what does it mean? We will come back at it, because then after, I think we started implementing the Constitution, is it in 2010? So maybe by 2030, that will be 20 years. So the entire of that article will disappear from our Constitution.
Okay. So I'll come to Vincent. Let's allow Kenneth also to chime in into this particular topic, because I want to hear the perspective of a tax expert when it comes, especially even the control of budget, issued a circular to the county governments that they should no longer offer bursaries. That is not their mandate. The mandate falls within the NGCDF bursary. We have seen that tug of war between the control of budget and the county governors at the end of the day. I would like to get your views on that as well.
Okay. Yeah, I think for that it is very clear in terms of how in terms of the policy should be implemented, in terms of which docket does this really fall under. And I think in my opinion it is very clear that when it comes to matters of the bursary, then they should actually really not be handled by the as you've mentioned, and maybe just to marry it to what we have in terms of the tax policy when it comes to this. So maybe I'd want to widen up the perspective, and when it comes to sort of activities at the grassroots level, we'd be looking at something like, we'd be thinking of other activities where, in terms of, we can really support in terms of the youth. So we're looking at, for example, the sports activities, So we see the finance bill really removing that. There used to be an incentive for taxpayers who sort of support such sports initiatives, and with the approval of the CS of Sports, then that expenditure would actually be allowed. And so we see something like this actually coming out from, it's been repealed from the Income Tax Act. And in my opinion, I think, especially when it comes to this period that we're dealing with, we have NACADA trying to get youths out from alcohol and drugs and betting activities that are also harassing our youth. So maybe what would be important for the government is to see how they can actually help more taxpayers in terms of try to assist, something like that for the sports activities, and so that would be a legislation that I think the government should rethink and be able to allow companies to actually support, so that we don't have issues where we have sportsmen who get stranded outside there and matters like that. So when it comes to a tax policy perspective, I think that it should also favor the youth and try to support them in terms of keeping them away from all their vices.
And Melly, chiming into the same particular topic, given that you heard from Alexander and Vincent, the issue is Parliament right now is carrying out public participation in regards to the NGCDF matter as a whole. But you see, the argument that Alexander is making is the same as Raila Amolo Odinga, who is the ODM leader, was making, that it should be a referendum, ought not to be public participation. It should go to the people to decide.
I think the courts gave Parliament a chance to enact it, to put it into the Constitution, to constitutionalize it. And on 6th of May, you were even in the ground when they were doing public participation. Yes. And I was here, we were discussing with Ben Troy about the same CDF. I think, one, the parliamentarians should be kicked out of CDF. But the fund should remain under a different administrator other than a member of parliament, because if you look at what CDF has done in constituencies, it's in some constituency it has done very tremendous developments. But now if you come again and repeal the same thing and you expect now the county government to do, remember the county government has specific functions. When it comes to issues to do with tertiary institutions, secondary schools and primary schools, the county government is not involved because it is only allocated ECDE, the early childhood education. So if we were to remove CDF, what replaces it? That is the question, the big question. And remember, the CDF also is managed through the county commissioner's office. Remember, the county commissioners and the team that is at the county commissioner's office is also having a hand, because the government also sends CDF manager to the ground. There is the fund manager on the ground. There is the supply chain management administrator on the ground that is sent by the government. The issue about the member of parliament is not even, it doesn't even sit in the committee. I don't know how they arrived at saying that they should be removed from it. Of course, they could have a hand in the cookie jar, and perhaps sometimes that is where the problem, we say, who ate my cookie? And perhaps if the law is specific on who should be in charge of CDF, the CDF should remain at the county constituency level. And there was even a proposal whereby, for example, all bursaries should be consolidated. There's no need whereby an MC is giving a bursary, the MP is giving a bursary, the women rep, the senator, the governor, and then at the national level there is also a bursary. Why can they consolidate all these funds? Remember, education, Ministry of Education takes the biggest chunk of the budget, and therefore if all this is consolidated and make free primary, free secondary education, it is possible. But these are now the loopholes where we lose on our revenue, because if the member of parliament is going to give out, remember, he will not give out the entire amount, and this is where we have even heard of fictitious bursary recipients who are not even students. And sometimes you hear of bursary which has been given to a school and some amount taken back through the back door. So if we had the systems working in this country, mine has been systems working. It is not even about whether CDF should be there, whether the devolved government should be there. It's about the systems working. If everybody was to do their job, there's somebody who said, I don't know, that these experts will remind me that, do something as if it was the last thing you are going to do on earth. Or it was give all the effort as if you are going to die the next minute. So if we were to manage our funds, whether it is CDF, whether it is the national resources, we can all do well as a country. We have a chance, and I am saying for the benefit of doubt, Kimosov said that perhaps we are casting aspersions most of the time. We want to see systems work. We want to see our revenue working. We want to see the revenue collection being transparent. For example, the other day, the president set a task force to get to know how much do we owe and whom do we owe. So has that task force come out with a report and said this is what we owe this country or this country? So
the reason Kimosop hasn't taken that particular position wholeheartedly is because there was a court order. But given that we're running out of time, let me give you a minute each. Let me start with you, Vincent, as we're winding up.
I had a response. Is that part of the minute?
Okay, you can respond.
I wanted to say we made a mistake when it came to the issue of the equalization fund. We split that fund so small and thinly spread it that I actually doubt it will make the impact that we so desire in terms of equalization, because and that for me conceptually is something that I had an issue. Maybe one of these days, Alex, we can revisit that conversation here, because when you spread equalization fund to mirror CDF, the big impact that was meant to do in terms of doing major projects that bring other counties to the same standard of development, we will not have an issue. We will not have the impact we desire. So just in closing, I just want to say that yes, the finance bill that has been our subject of conversation hasn't proposed primarily new taxes, focuses on the issue of tax efficiency, consolidating and supporting the fiscal authority, which is the KRA, to be able to do more and collect more. And I would want to say that and encourage Kenyans that their views do matter, and public policy making is a contested public square, and the people who actually make their case, and they do it very well in a convincing way, at times carry the day, and it's good to encourage this conversation. Kudos to the media. Let's continue with this conversation, because it's only us who would actually build the Kenya that we would want.
Okay, Alexander, quickly.
Thank you. I think the discussion that we've had here is quite healthy, looking at the finance bill and the budget and how it is impacting us. And as Vincent has said, let us continue airing our views. The day after tomorrow, I'll be appearing before the Finance and Planning Committee to bring out some of these small issues that we are seeing coming up in the current finance bill, and hoping that we sustain what we have seen in this finance bill. There are a few areas that need to be improved, but if we continue this way and have some stability in the tax policy, then the country will benefit from this, and the private sector will benefit from the same. But there are a few things that we'll be proposing that need to be amended in the same. On financing, then looking at the allocations they were there, we will make also our recommendations, and our view is we need to work more on proper revenue estimation, so that then the many supplementary budgets that we have due to not meeting these revenue targets are minimized going forward.
Kenneth, quickly, your closing remarks.
Yeah, so just as has been mentioned here, I think the Finance Bill 2025 has generally been okay. It's, as saying, it has been trying to just clean up the tax provisions, the various ones, and sort of rationalize the tax expenditure by shifting the VAT status of various items. I think there are some positives to it and there are some negatives to it. And maybe what we'd recommend is that the government needs to seriously think about implementing the medium-term revenue strategy and actually following what the national tax policy provides, because that will give taxpayers a certainty. And even in terms from a government perspective, it means that whatever initiatives you have, the tax should actually really try to support. Yeah, we've seen some places where Government has a policy to do this, but the tax does not really support it. So in terms of submissions, we have made our submissions, we have made our voices known, and we hope that the committee will consider some of our proposals in terms of making the finance bill a more accommodating one.
Okay, Meli, unfortunately we are running out of time.
To the Kenyans out there, the finance bill is your document, it is your expenditure, and looking at it, 80% is status quo, just a few introductions and deletions here and there. So participate in public participation, and at the end of the day, also follow up in its implementation, like the women in Kirinyaga who are checking on the markets that are being constructed. Follow up and see the government projects are being implemented. Don't sit on the back.
Okay, thank you so much. That is Sami Meli, political analyst, Vincent Kimoso, policy governance expert, Kenneth Kahore, tax manager at PKF, Alexander Rithi, the head of programs at the Institute for Social Accountability. Gentlemen, thank you for honoring our invitation this morning for the better part. Till this afternoon, we're about to even reach 12 p.m. here, but don't go too far. Kasichana Masha is up next with Kurunzi Mashinani. My name is Abdiaziz Hashim. The sign language interpreter at the bottom end of the screen is Anne Wangeshi. Good morning for now.
Sekta ya blue economy ni sekta muhimu sana kwetu sisi kama taifa, kwa sababu ni sekta ambayo ina nafasi mpya ya kiuchumi, kiajira na kutengeza utajiri kwa wananchi wa Kenya. Na serikali imewekeza pesa mingi ya kuboresha production. Sasa hivi ya samaki inaanza kukua. Tumekupa uwezo wa kuvua, sasa tunakupatia uwezo wa kupreserve. You know, when you have fish that's about to rot, you will sell it in the morning kwa bei ya jioni, and you really suffer losses. So it is very critical to have landing sites, modern landing sites. Hivi majuzi tumetangaza kandarasi ya maeneo 9 katika Lake Victoria. Za jimbo la Pwani zinaendelea. Sasa hii tuna design 2 katika Lake Turkana, ambao wanatoa samaki anaitwa kama mango tilapia, that is very popular katika eneo la DRC, Central Africa, so that you preserve your catch. Then ni sisi sasa kama serikali tukufungulie soko. I tell you, and I just note it down somewhere, in 5 years from today, in 2 years, we'll have a complete different conversation on job opportunities and wealth creation for the people in the space of blue economy and maritime affairs.
Helen Rose. I come from Uganda. I do business. I sell cassava. I make cassava flour and I bring it here to the market here in Kenya. We exchange money. We get Kenya currency and we change it to Uganda currency. That is one good importance. And the second thing, we have made friendship here. We can buy from Uganda and come and sell here, Kenyans buy. So we are now used to each other via business. We bring here maize, cassava flour, beans, all other produce. Right now we have 2 types of means of transport. We have water bus and we have these other boats that use the engine. We buy from there and we come, we sell from here. And after selling from here, we also buy some other things we like from here. We go back to Uganda freely. There's a promising future. Because when I come with my goods, I sell here. When I go back to Uganda, I pay my children school fees, which is automatically the future. To our brothers and sisters, friends, neighbors, our customers, thank you for accepting us to do international trade between Kenya and Uganda. We wish you the best and we appreciate. Maji yetu, tama yetu.
naitwa Bruno Ishoso. Mimi ndio mkurugenzi mkuu wa service ya Kenya Coast Guard Service. Tuko na great potential, endeleza sukuma nchi kwa uchumi iendelee vizuri sana. Kazi yetu ni ku make sure tuko na usalama ya kutosha within all our territorial waters. Na beyond usalama hiyo, kuna tena ile ya safety. Wale wenye wako na biashara kwa maji, wakiwa na shida ama nini, tutashughulikia haraka, first response mechanism hiyo. Tuliingia hapo tukaambia tuko na sheria ya maji, na hatukukimbia kuenforce, tulikimbia kwanza kufunzana na hao. So tuko na program ile kubwa sana supported na government ya Kenya na hata na wenzetu kutoka ng'ambo. Kazi ni kufunza wananchi, na tumeanza kutana around mines. Kwanza kuambia hii mali ni mali yenu, tuitunze, tuitumie sustainably. Mkienda kwa maji, upande wa usalama, muangalie vitu fulani, muvae namna hii, hizo vifaa zenu ziko compliant. Ukienda pale kama Lake Victoria, tumekuwa na shida sana, changamoto na kwa sekta ya uvuvi na wenzetu from across Tanzania na Uganda kama Migingo kule. Sababu ya Coast Guard kufika hapa, tumeleta utulivu na kubuild confidence na wavuvi wetu, na tena kubuild urafiki na wenzetu across. Shida ikitokea kwa hao, tunaongea na wale wenzetu kule, tunaingilia ndani na tunatatua. Wa Kenya, maji yetu, dhamani yetu.
My name is William Kiama Jeremiah. I started my farm way back in 2000 after learning more and more about aquaculture from the government Sagana Fish Aquaculture Farm. I learned about rearing foodie fish like tilapia and catfish. I also learned how to farm ornamental fish like goldfish. And then I had to get fries and fingerlings from there to come and stock my small pond of 5 meters by 10. I had also mixed the goldfish with the tilapia. I knew they could coexist. Then after 3 months, I started eating my tilapia. And then the 4th month, I realized that I had about 650 goldfish. The government, they helped me to get the market. I sold about 600 from that small piece of 5 meters by 10. That was the eye opener. I had eaten tilapia from the small pond. I had sold fish. That's the way I started constructing ponds here and there. Let me be very sincere. A meter square of rearing ornamentals can't be compared with a meter square of even tea. I have young men who are coming here by matatus to come and pick some ornamentals here. After 1 year, they come here driving Vauxhall because these young men are the ones who are now constructing some waterfalls in those high-end areas. Let me tell you, ni maji yetu, dhamani yetu.
Je, umewahi Mall